Welcome to New Friends Cinema,
where we get to know each other by sharing our favorite movies.
From childhood throwbacks to recent comforts, we walk through the stories together.
Keep in mind this podcast contains mad spoilers, and join us at the
New Friends Cinema. Are we ready to get started?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hey, party people. Welcome back to New Friends Cinema.
Welcome back.
I'm Dakota.
I love this energy. I'm Courtney.
Just completely out of nowhere. I just wanted to try something new.
I like it.
Mhm.
It's bright and shiny and
Halfway
alarming.
I second guessed myself halfway through. I was like, this is not me. This is so not
Retreat.
me. But it was too late. I had to go all the way. We just went for lunch.
Delicious.
It was so good. Thai
so
food.
good. I had 2 boba teas, nursing the second as we speak.
Yeah.
I'm going to be wired later while I shovel the driveway.
You'll need it.
Yeah.
You'll need it.
Ah.
That was good. I am getting over a cold.
Yes.
We had to cancel last week
Mhm.
because I have said it many times. Prob got sick. I really got confident that I was going to make it all the way through. And then right at the tail end, it got me.
Yep.
But I'm feeling much better now. But I think I sound weird, right? Like I sound kind of...
A little not like frog-y.
Yeah.
But you're on your way out of being sick.
Yeah. So you'll hear me sucking on a lozenge and
Coughing up a
coughing
lung.
a little bit. Before we get into today's movie, which is Courtney's pick,
Ooh.
I'm very excited. I have a bit of business before we get into it, but I do just want to say that I gasped so many times during this movie.
Oh!
Watching it, I was like,
The drama.
it was crazy.
Mhm.
But I do have something.
Mm-hmm.
We recently had our 1-year anniversary.
We did.
And I got you an anniversary gift.
You did?
I did.
Oh my goodness.
It's small.
I'm excited.
Okay, close your eyes.
Okay.
I just have to... It's in my sock.
Oh,
It's
what?
On the side. It's not like under. Don't worry. It's
Okay.
not something you eat.
Okay, can I
Okay,
open?
open your eyes.
Oh my goodness. It's a key.
Yeah.
For what?
My house.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, Prob and I talked about it, and we've wanted to have someone aside from us for a while have our key. And yeah, so we talked about it, and then we thought that it's you. We trust you,
I
and
am honored.
it's for emergency use only. But
Okay.
I mean, you can abuse that. I don't really.
Excellent. Your door is usually open, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I do. Well, I mean, it's not always open, but I
No.
unlock it if you're coming over. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's because I don't like to get up.
Fair enough. I am honored. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, that's very sweet. And for those of you, obviously, who can't see, it's decorated in like a star moon motif, which happens to match the blanket that I am using in this cozy room. I'm sensing a bit of a theme for you.
You know what happened was I went to get it cut, and then the guy was like, do you want to just do normal, or do you want to pick like something fun? And then he shows me this huge rack with 4 sides of so many different keys. I panicked and I just grabbed it, and
Instinctually.
yeah,
It's
so.
amazing. Thank you. I'm going to keep
welcome.
it. And to
Yeah,
be fair,
please
that's
keep
very
it, yeah.
handy to have somebody down the street have a spare key.
Yeah, and since we're going to be going back to Crawford Bay too, it just feels like it's,
Nice.
it just feels good to have someone in town that has a key. That's
Lovely.
And we're both space cadets, Prob and I, so we're lucky we don't get locked up more often than we do.
Oh, well, that's lovely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh,
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Aw.
Friendiversary. Are you
Shall
ready to
we?
get into
Yeah,
it?
let's do it.
Okay. So, my movie this week was, drumroll please, brrrr, Sleepy Hollow.
Mm-hmm.
The Tim Burton 1999 gothic horror, a supernatural horror, I suppose. A delightful movie of death and betrayal and secrets, all set in a spooky, isolated town in upstate New York.
It's like 17th century, right?
Yeah,
Or 18th century?
1800s, yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
I never realized it was Tim Burton.
Interesting. But there is like a very Tim Burton
As
style.
soon as it came on, I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
This movie had a special spot in my heart growing up, where we would watch, Nightmare Before Christmas fairly often on a regular rotation, but it was very oriented around a season, whereas Sleepy Hollow was, yes, spooky in that Halloween sense, but it was a movie that you could just
it's evergreen,
just whenever you want, all year.
Yeah.
And I must admit, watching it as a kid, didn't pick up half of the shit that's going on, because this plot's pretty wild.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving pieces, and yeah. But, as I watched it getting older, certainly there were, little bits and pieces that I'd be like, oh, I never noticed that, or oh, that is so cool, and oh, that's dark and twisted. But the music in this movie really hit me. I really enjoyed this orchestra, theatrical soundtrack, I suppose, that goes with this very dark, gothic, moody movie.
It's the same guy that does all of Tim Burton's
Danny
movies.
Elfman. Yeah, really good.
Mm-hmm.
To the main actors, which we will get into, Christina Ricci and Johnny Depp. Christina Ricci was 19 when she filmed this movie.
Wow.
And Johnny Depp was 36, which is interesting.
Yeah.
We will get into that.
Yeah, I love Christina Ricci.
Oh.
She's one of my faves from forever.
Yeah, she was an it girl for sure. She was in so many movies.
As a
Such
kid.
range.
Yeah.
Child actor turned adult actor, successful. Shall we get into it?
I'm really excited. I just want to say that watching it, I realized this was one that did come home on family movie night, and I definitely hid in the bathroom for this one.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, because it's 1999, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, for example, Sweeney Todd came out in 2007. I loved that movie.
Similar vibe-ish.
Similar vibe. 1999, I was a little young. And when I was little, I couldn't stand anything even a little bit scary. So there were parts of the movie where I'm like, I remember this. But then
running
huge gaps of I've never seen this movie. So I know for a fact it would have been, I watched for a bit, it got too heavy, I went and hid in the bathroom, read Harry Potter for 45 minutes. I came back because people would be wondering where I was around the halfway mark, watched for about 5 minutes, went back to the bathroom.
Dakota, okay, she's going to the bathroom a lot.
I have diarrhea.
Got the scary tooth.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that. But yes, I'm excited. Let's do it.
Okay. Yes, this movie, like I said, has a special spot in my heart, and it kind of reveals a little bit of a theme for me. I loved a lot of horror growing up. A lot of besides obviously my other movie, Harriet the Spy, a lot of horror movies. I love the darkness. So the movie opens with a series of shots with dripping wax on paper, a man and a woman holding hands, and a panning camera reveals that this is the last will and testament for someone. A series of signatures are being written on a document, including witnesses. And then the document is folded neatly and sealed with a wax stamp. And the image on said stamp is of the Van Garrett family crest, a windmill, which will tie us all back together at the end. And then the movie continues where we see the Van Garrett carriage being driven through very spooky cornfields. Lightning flashes, which, by the way, this whole movie is just lightning. Every single moment's either fog or lightning, which is just atmospheric as fuck. And this old gent, Van Garrett, appears to be quite spooked. He's a little paranoid.
Okay.
Looking around.
The first note on my thing is that man's face when he looks out the carriage window is so funny. Exactly the noise you made is this is an audio medium, but it got me. It's so funny.
Encapsulates it perfectly.
He's spooked.
He's quite spooked. But then we see a flash of a dark horse speeding by. Might I say at an abnormally fast speed. Hence the supernatural part.
Yeah.
The sound of a sword is being unsheathed.
I like sword.
That's very phonetic. And Van Garrett looks out the window to see that his valet's head had been chopped clean off.
And he goes,
oh no. And so begins the whole movie of heads being chopped off. The carriage, is racing along still, and Van Garrett jumps out of a moving carriage and like rolls into the nearby cornfield, and we hear another sword being unsheathed, and as like he kind of like makes his way through the cornfield running away.
Yeah, he's like
running
this way, that way.
and like he takes a pause after like encountering a very spooky scarecrow, and then his head gets chopped off, just whoosh. And
he was an old man.
He was.
Yeah.
And dressed up in clearly like fine garments, with
like wealthy, yeah.
Wealthy fine garments with, that classic 1800s, wig. So many wigs in this movie. Let me just say. Everybody's got a wig.
Everybody's got a wig except for Johnny Depp.
Except for Johnny Depp. I think that's so natural. And, obviously he's decapitated, and we, the scene fades to black where we are now in 1800s New York, and we're introduced to Ichabod Crane, played by Johnny Depp.
I love the name Ichabod.
What a fun word to say.
It feels
Ichabod.
good. Yeah, it feels good.
Ichabod. There's so many vowels and consonants that just make a fun word to say.
Yeah. Also, he was a freak.
Oh.
Ichabod.
He had some peculiar interests, for sure.
I was thinking it's like very a la like doctors at the time, like they would back in the day like pay for corpses to be like dug up from the cemetery and stuff to like you weren't allowed to look inside a body.
Oh, it's blasphemy, right? Like it goes against all the laws of, nature, but also the way that the church really highlighted, I think at the time, the taboo nature of understanding what's going on in there. Under the hood.
Under the hood, yeah. Yeah, so I just like noted that it's like he's really like this investigating like thing that he's doing, like he's really making it up as he goes. But he's got this like he's a real freak.
Oddball.
Like at the time.
Yeah.
Are we not allowed to say freak?
No, that's just another word that I like to use for him. But like he definitely is like that peculiar, oddball, freakish kind of way of thinking that other people are just disturbed by. Like, why would you want to know?
When I say
that?
like he's a freak, I mean like
yeah,
they're looking at him going like, this guy is freaky.
Yeah, like why would you want to know that stuff? So, cue to the scene of him fishing a body out of the canal, just being like, we need to alert the authorities that we have a murder on our hands.
Yeah.
And so we follow Ichabod to the police station, where he then begs with the high constable to allow him to examine the body, because clearly, like, he's curious. He has this curious mind. He does not want to leave things unanswered.
Yeah.
He's like, but why?
And they're like, well, it was in the water, so it drowned, dummy.
Right. Like, he's immediately brushed off.
Yeah.
They don't want to put any more resources into this, body.
Because it's gross.
Yeah. And, like, they're probably at the time being like, well, he's dead. Doesn't matter what happened at this point. But Ichabod is all about the why. We really get to see this like glimpse into his mind here, because he protests and he pleads. He's like, let me examine the body because he could have died pre-river. And don't you want to know that? He wants to conduct an autopsy, which was new at the time, probably been happening for many years, but behind like closed doors. This is like the first, maybe at the time, I haven't done enough research obviously, but this is really when criminal or like forensic science was like coming into play here. And as a kid, I was obsessed with forensic science. I would have loved to be like CSI or something like that, but I have a weak fucking stomach. I cannot handle it.
Yeah.
Oh, and this movie is gross.
Yeah. So is this the part where he's like in the court?
Yeah, or like what is that called? Like the bully room, or where all of the police officers have their...
Yeah. But the main guy is Saruman, right?
Yes, I wrote that. Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee. And Christopher Lee, isn't James Bond based off of him? I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Christopher Lee's cousin is the guy that wrote James Bond, and it's loosely based off him. He did some badass shit in World War II. Yeah. He was like fully a spy, yeah.
I need to go down that pipeline, because that is a wild story waiting to be listened to.
Yeah.
So obviously it's not a good time to be a criminal. Similar to the punishments that we saw in Knight's Tale. There's a lot of torture. There's a lot of cruel forms of restraining people, imprisoning people. It's just,
like you just go in there and like get sick and die.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. It's grim.
Yeah.
It probably smells bad. Morals are not really present there, but I guess we flash forward from, I guess, the prison police station to a bit of a courtroom scene where we see Christopher Lee as the judge shutting him down. You've tried to like request this before, blah blah blah, and Ichabod's like super trying to like urging him to reconsider that in order to be using like the most up-to-date science and, you know, really evolving crime scene investigation. They should really, you know, explore other means of understanding you know, their world. And the burgomaster, which is actually a fun word that I had to look up, essentially the judge, explains to Ichabod that he has two choices. He can either, you know, go to the dungeon to think about his problems, and we get a flash of like what the dungeon's like, or be sent away to solve a mysterious crime in an isolated Dutch settlement in upstate New York. And he explains that 3 people have been murdered there, all within a fortnight, and they were found without their heads. Ooh. And I gotta admit, like, Ichabod's like, that sounds dope. I really want to go.
That sounds fun as
like,
fuck.
This is not like, obviously it's not a choice in the sense I don't want to go to the dungeon, but this is pretty cool, actually. Basically, I call him Ick.
I do too.
Ichabod is just too much to type out.
I think I wrote Icky.
Icky,
yeah.
Which is perfect nickname for our little weirdo. Okay, so basically Icky has to go to this town and figure out what's going on with this mysterious murder situation, or he's in trouble. So we really get to see that Ichabod is a bit of a troublemaker in the sense that he likes to push limitations. He's opting for change and protesting that, you know, things should be done in a better way. And obviously these old guys are rolling their eyes being like, ugh, this guy again. Really a thorn in their sides. So we then have this like scene of Ichabod, you know, packing up his wares and his tools and gadgets. Mm-hmm. And we see a variety of contraptions that he's, you know, tucking away. We have like inventions, weird goggles, a lot of, he's clearly an educated person.
His fucking goggles are very Tim Burton.
Oh, it's over the top.
Yeah.
Really kind of steampunky.
Yeah.
In the way that I would imagine inventions to be at the time. Just really absurd.
Yeah. That old-timey idea of the future.
Right.
Like, yeah, very over the top.
You know what this needs? More. This invention needs more layers to it.
Yeah.
But we see that Ichabod's like clearly like an educated person with, you know, sciences, anatomy, biology. And as Ichabod is packing up his office, he releases a pet cardinal into probably not the freshest air of,
that
industrial,
thing died immediately.
New York. But it's a really neat use of color. And I'll just take a moment here from my little script here just to say how much I appreciate the use of obvious color theory in this movie, but the use of the color red amongst the backdrop of just like very dark, dreary, black, gray, white. And red always pops up in like some later dreams and nightmares and obviously blood. Because this is a decapitating movie, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just really appreciate the obvious nature of it, but it's aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
So we follow Ichabod in a carriage in his journey to Sleepy Hollow. And this movie is set in like an autumn time, upper state New York, rural area, and we weave through like these dark, twisty, forested woodland areas, and Icky like passes out in the carriage asleep but before he's like inspecting his tools and whatnot. But I can imagine those carriage rides being A, incredibly uncomfortable, and B, boring.
Long
and
AF.
long.
Yeah.
Long. But the camera really pauses on Ichabod's hands here, where we see, you know, these really pinprick scars.
Oh, yeah, he's got those. It's like a grid of pinpoints on his hands.
Yeah. And we don't linger too long here, but it's like a little tidbit that's going to be explained in various steps through the movie, which I love. And so we see Ichabod being dropped off at his destination. This like eerie, foggy, in my opinion, quite like beautiful.
Yeah, definitely.
Small village.
Yeah. I grew up in Armstrong, and it's like on swampland. So we used to get hella fog. Ooh. Hella fog. Not swampland, like marshland.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it would be so foggy, like coming, because you'd come like down into town. And that like feeling of very moody, like,
fog is such a beautiful way to like create atmosphere. It's either like cozy, in the British moors, let's have some tea, or it's creepy as fuck.
Like suffocating, or you don't know what's out there.
Don't.
Mhm.
Ooh. Great tool.
So much dry ice. The dry ice budget for this movie was out of control.
This movie is like tucked into the woods or nearby the Hudson River, and we follow Ichabod through the ridiculous muddy kind of like rural town, trying to find like the person that he's supposed to connect with, right? Because he's on a mission. He's got some things to figure out.
Well, because it was like a request from this person in the town for somebody to come. Yeah. Right? I don't think they requested specifically him, but they were like requesting to New York that somebody come and help. Yeah.
Like our local, I guess, minimal police presence here is not doing enough. We need some backup here. But as he's walking through the village, we see villagers closing their shutters, scurrying inside. There's obviously a vibe going on here where people are on edge. And Ichabod peers through to see, like, over in the distance, a group of men changing of the guard, of like in that like watch post area. People are scared. Rightfully so, because there's some spooky shit happening.
Well, and there's only like 20 people in town, and 3 of them are dead already.
Right? Yeah, there's anybody could be next.
Yeah.
So Icky moves his way to a large house on the hill, and he knocks on the front door and hears some people making out in the shadows, kind of like on the deck area, and we don't really get to see a whole lot.
No, but this place is groovy.
Yeah, some bumping shit is happening. Yeah. He doesn't think twice. Like, he like shrugs it off. He's like, oh, well, whatever. Yeah. And there appears to be a pretty bumping party happening on the inside. So he gets let in, and people are drinking and chatting and playing games, and it's an interesting contrast to like witness, I think, how freaked out everybody is, but then we also have like, a little bit of a rager happening up at the mayor's house.
Gotta let loose every now and again.
Gotta let loose.
Yeah.
And Ichabod happens to, without meaning to, like find himself in the middle of like this blindfolded game.
Oh yeah.
Where we are introduced to the character Katrina von Tassel, played by Christina Ricci.
Yes.
And Ichabod asks to speak to Baltus von Tassel, her father, and just about that time, this old-timey bro like wants to throw hands at our Ichabod because he's talking to his gal.
I love this guy.
Yeah. Brom, that was his name. Brom.
Yeah, he's like, hey, what? Kissing my chick.
And it's like, oh god, settle.
And it was like a peck on the cheek in the game. Yeah, so funny.
But just about as like some bros about to throw some hands, Baltus and his wife make a grand entrance into the living space, I suppose, of the party place. And Ichabod immediately reveals himself to be, the constable assigned to investigate these murders. And it is suggested that Ichabod is to stay in the Van Tassel home while he conducts his investigation. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty... Like, that's great. Those accommodations are really nice there.
It's a nice house, yeah.
Really pretty.
And Baltus is Dumbledore, right?
Yes. So you texted me while watching this movie being like, this is a Harry Potter reunion movie going on in here.
Yeah, because he's Dumbledore, and then his wife is Rita Skeeter.
Yeah.
That actress. Mm-hmm. And there's one more there. I can't remember who. But there's one more person that was in it. Anyway. Oh yeah, Vernon Dursley, one of the.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
The magistrate. I can't remember. Mm-hmm. So a little while later, Ichabod is taken to the study where he meets what appears to be like the town council of important dudes, like the town elders.
Okay, the priest's wig. Can we? That thing is so bad.
It's like off center too, right? Like kind of hanging off of his head.
It's very large, like it's egg shaped kind of on laterally top, and then it goes out, it's smooth, and then it's got like fucking like Shirley Temple curls,
like poodle curls,
on the bottom. And that's he was the principal in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I'm pretty sure, that actor.
Yes. So he's giving stern, stone face,
hard to take serious. With that fucking wig.
They're all kind of silly looking, aren't they?
I didn't know that. And he's the priest, though, right? Like, he's the town, or like the bishop or something.
Yeah,
like,
he's
like
the religious figure.
Guy.
Yeah, he's in charge of God in town. Right? So he meets the town elders. So we have the town doctor, we have the reverend, we have the magistrate, and the notary. And so Von Tassel explained that he's just a simple farmer who just made it big.
Yeah.
And he's essentially like the town landlord and banker. I called him the mayor, right? Like,
might as well be. It's the guy who owns all the land.
Yeah, a bunch of guys running the town. So Ichabod questions these men about the murders, naturally, because he's there to investigate. And we find out that a father and son were found together, decapitated. A week later, the widow Winship, which is just fun to say, was also decapitated. Not so fun to say. Their heads were not found at all. And
this guy's like stealing heads.
He's taken the heads, which, you know, in Ichabod's theory is like, oh, this guy's looking to keep trophies, right? Like, that's common for, you know, serial killers to do.
I mean, I guess they wouldn't have even had that at that time term or anything like that. That's like,
is this roughly around the time of like Jack the Ripper in London? I wonder. Curious. It's got like similar time ish. And we find out though that these guys already have a theory. They're pretty set in stone, believing that this creepy like stuff is happening because their heads were taken by the Headless Horseman. And they go on to explain this theory further, where this boogeyman, right? Like this very creepy guy was a Hessian mercenary played by none other than Christopher Walken. So good. Yeah. Like perfect casting for this. And so this mercenary was sent to the States by German princes for political whatnot. And the horseman came for the carnage of battle.
Yeah, that's like the legend of it, right? That he like that it was war, but he like fucking loved it. Like he was above and beyond. Yeah. Right? So that's kind of like what makes him so scary, or made him so scary, was that it wasn't like was that he was like in his element. He loved it.
Yeah. And like not even the sense that like his spooky spirit is scary. Like the dude himself before he died was kind of demonic and evil in that sense.
Yeah. I mean his teeth were like filed to a point,
right? His horse was named Daredevil.
I love it. That is so cute.
I'm so hard that I named my horse Daredevil.
Stop.
Love it. So he was infamous for like riding his big ass Daredevil horse into battle and just chopping off heads at full gallop. Just like, I don't have time to get off my horse. I'm just gonna chop, chop, chop.
Chop, chop.
And so he filed his teeth down to sharp, nasty points. So he's visually like alarming to look at. And, you know, the horseman finally meets his end at the end of 79. So 1779, I suppose, in the western woods near Sleepy Hollow.
Right. And this is like the turn of the century then, right?
Yeah.
Like this is like just like 20 years later or something like
exactly.
that. Yeah, okay.
So, you know, we have this like scene where we're watching, you know, the horseman in battle and bloodthirsty, chopping off heads. And then we follow him, you know, as he kind of gets taken down and he's running away into the winter woods. And he's like kind of dodging gunfire by the soldiers, and he's hunted in like deep into the woods, where he's accosted by two small girls.
Accosted?
Yeah, like confronted or like
yeah. Sorry, but these like fucking creepy little twins.
Oh, and like the most formal wear ever. Like, what are you wearing in the woods like that?
And it's the middle of winter too.
Yeah,
like put a coat on,
girl.
And they're like 6 or something, right?
Yeah,
like little young girls. That's
young.
Terrifying.
Yes. So these like Shining-esque little twins in full formal wear, like gowns.
I thought they were ghosts.
the Daredevil riding spooky man is like, oh good God, like, oh,
so
what the fuck are you doing here?
Little kids are scary.
And you know what? When they're dressed in formal wear and they're twins, adds another layer.
Even worse.
Adds another layer of scary. But like he gestures at them to shh, be quiet. And one of the girls just like straight up snaps a twig, like really loudly, and she's just like, you gonna tell me to shut up?
Yeah.
And the soldiers obviously are alerted to where their whereabouts are, and they come running, and he attempts to fight off the group, and a valiant effort, I must say. He takes out a couple.
He was a good fighter, yeah.
He ends up, you know, biting the biscuit, while one of the girls watches from behind the tree, little creep.
Yeah. I have never heard biting the biscuit.
Is that not a term?
I've never heard it. It probably is.
It's
There's
probably
lots of things I've never heard of.
It's probably like two things that I melded together.
I like it.
Biting the biscuit is dying, or like
okay.
Biting the dust. No,
sniffing. No. I'm not. There's nothing wrong with it. I just have never heard that.
It's a term.
I like it.
Biting the biscuit. And it's the little girl who did the snapping of the stick is like lingering to watch this go down. And so the soldiers chop off the horseman's head with his own sword, cold. And then he's buried in the woods. And they called him a seed of evil, which is, I don't like that at all. Seed of evil. Just the word seed is gross.
Yeah.
And 20 years later, the Hessian awakes to chop off more heads.
Yeah.
And they kind of leave it at that.
And they, like, while they're telling him this tale too, we're like fully engrossed, like, in this story.
Totally.
Then we kind of like snap out of it at the end.
And we're back into the study.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like our experience is written on Ichabod's face because he is shook. He's not always like, oh no. But he tries to keep his cool. He's a scientific man after all. And he's like, well, that's just whatever.
Yeah.
That's just a story.
It's a ghost story. Yeah.
He's a man of science and facts. And he pledges himself to find the man responsible for these deaths. And he's not going to entertain this morbid story, not in the slightest.
Mm-hmm.
But we do get the vibe in town that people are adamant that this is not PvP here. This is something spooky coming in supernatural style. More fog sets in.
More fog.
Torches are snuffed out. And the man who is in that watchtower has his gun cocked ready to fire. Yeah. And we hear aggressive galloping.
Yeah, and it's all foggy.
Oh, and
he's
very
like looking
spooky.
Out, right?
Yes. And we hear a single gunshot.
He shoots. Yeah.
I'm all about the sound effects today, actually.
Yeah,
I think
like
it's the two boba teas.
You are like
caffeinated.
Yeah, I love it.
And so we watch this like watchtower man run into the woods, and he's being chased. And come on, you are on foot. He's on horseback. Why not just go into the woods and start dodging him through the trees here? He's in the middle of the road.
Yeah. This is also, I think I can't remember if it was this part, but Prob watched half of the movie with me.
Yeah.
And we're watching it, and he was like, shoot him again. And I was like, do you fucking understand how long it took to reload a gun back then?
There is a scene
like
later
15 minutes to he can't just shoot him again. He took his one shot blindly into the mist,
the
and
fog.
now he's fucked. Yeah.
So a sword is sung, and his head goes a rolling, and the watchman is dead. Which is, we actually get to see a little bit more of this as well. So, cue to the next morning, where Ichabod is being given a horse for his time in the village. Gunpowder is his name, which is so sweet because the horse itself is like, kind of white, kind of gray, but speckled a little bit.
And the guy that's like with him is like is nice, right?
Yeah, pleasant.
And it's just funny because he's like, obviously like Ichabod isn't really, he's not a physical guy. And so he manages to he's like, okay, yeah, take me, I'll get on this horse. And he kind of gets on, he's like really struggling to control it. And I just thought it's that quirk.
Yeah, we really get to see that Ichabod grew up in the city reading books and never really an outside boy. That's for sure.
No, he's an indoor kid, yeah.
So this person, helps him get all set up with his horse, and they are, they're alarmed now to find that there was another murder, and they ride on their horses to go see, obviously, the murder scene. But Ichabod can't ride a horse to save his life, so he's the last to arrive to the scene. And the men are surrounding the body, and they all have their theories about the horseman, and the circle of dudes are in charge are theorizing about another one is gone, and the fourth victim, Jonathan Masbeth, had his head taken as well. So Ichabod explains the logical reasoning for removing heads from his victims are to prevent from being, identified, right? So they are trying now to figure out, through his scientific mind.
I guess might make sense in a city, but
not
in
here.
A town of 15 people.
Slowly
it's like
decreasing
there's
too.
not, it's either, okay, who's missing? All right, that's this guy.
Roll call, everyone.
Yeah.
So, searching for clues, he's acting out the scene. He pulls out his contraptions and his chemicals to do some neat little things with the body, and he puts the massive goggles on as well.
Yeah.
And notes that the wound was cauterized upon slicing.
Yeah.
AKA with the devil's fire.
And he's also grossed out. He puts the goggles on, he's looking at it, but he's struggling.
Yeah, he is trying to keep his breakfast down. So we then flash to the funeral of Jonathan Masbeth, where we meet his young son, who, valiantly commits himself to Ichabod's services to avenge his father's death. And I don't know his name other than young Masbeth. Does he have a name other than that? I can't recall.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Super sweet, super cute. Like,
yeah, he's got to be like 11 to 13, right?
Yeah, like a young,
a
preteen.
Between.
Mm-hmm. And as people are like, making their way, as the funeral ends, the magistrate reveals that Jonathan Masbeth was not, in fact, the fourth victim. He was the fifth. And Ichabod has like a double take. He's like, 4 graves, 5 victims? What do you mean?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is Vernon Dursley.
Yeah.
Who's telling him this information.
Yeah, he's
right?
got a little information that maybe he hasn't maybe fully revealed to the other elders yet.
This was on my notes, and I forgot to say, when they were all together in the room, him and like all the town elders, you could really tell that the priest didn't want the other guys like talking to him.
Don't share too much.
So I feel like that was part of it, is that he like this guy's got like, there's more going on, there's more information, and he had to give him this information outside of the other guys, because there's right, like that's what it feels like.
Oh yeah. And the movie is slowly that, right? Like we're getting slowly information from various different sources about the shenanigans that are happening in this town. And as any good criminal investigator would do, Ichabod's like, well, let's get all the bodies. I need to look at all of them. He's exhumed all the bodies, and he's doing his runaround with like the autopsies to find the clues that were not obtained before. And he discovers that the widow Winship was with child when she was murdered, and the belly was barely showing, but a stab wound was found in her abdomen where the uterus was holding the baby.
Yeah.
Which is dark.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna die anyway without the head of the mom, so.
Right? But like that, okay, when that happens, clearly the person who did it knew that there was a baby.
Yeah.
And B, wanted to be done. Like there was a mission there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad. And there are other sad parts in this movie too.
I cried.
Yeah. My sweet, sweet, delicate flower.
I cried. Yeah.
Oh, I love how your movies are like beautiful, like singing happy love stories, and I'm like, and then there was a decapitation. So the Ichabod conducts autopsies on all of the bodies, but particularly in Tim Burton classic style, the amount of like blood, like it's so obviously not blood, but it's blood. The color is like too vibrant red. The amount of like spurting and splooting and whatnot is also very Tim Burton-esque. And
he comes out of there completely
covered in head to toe. It's hilarious because he's like, good God, man, what were you doing in there?
Yeah.
We're dealing with a bad man.
Yeah. He's got an apron on, but it's like all over his like face and everything. Yeah.
So late into the evening, later on, we see Ichabod riding gunpowder through a covered bridge. Yeah. And he hears the sound of
this is a part
hooves.
Where I came back in and then I left again.
I
remember this part. I remember this
because we hear the horsemen approach and the clopping and the neighing of the horse, and all of a sudden we see a person without a head holding a flaming jack-o'-lantern, like racing after Ichabod. And Ichabod like shits his pants. He's like, oh my God, I'm out of here.
He's so scared. Yeah.
Runs away on horse. And the headless man is like chasing after him and then chucks the flaming pumpkin at his head. And as, Ichabod falls off his horse and he's like, oh, good God, bless me. Oh, whatever. We hear laughing.
Yeah.
It's a prank.
So as I was watching this, I was like, in my notes, I'm like, it feels really silly that the horseman would carry a pumpkin because it just feels like very counterintuitive to like what he's trying to do.
How are you slicing heads?
It's wasteful for his movement. And then I was like, does he always carry a pumpkin? And then I'm like, oh,
I see.
He's getting fucked with.
So I love this little scene in the movie because I think a majority of what we know about the Headless Horseman is kind of like that classic image of a Headless Horseman, but he's carrying or either wearing the jack-o'-lantern as a head. Like that's what I knew in that urban legend or spooky story about the Headless Horseman. So I think it was a nice little nod to the original, I guess, character.
Yeah, I did some like research into like what the book is like the original book, and like how close the stories were.
Nice.
And I can talk about it at the end. I
Cool.
guess. Yeah.
Put a pin.
But
in
I'd
that.
like to circle back to that.
Circle back. So Johnny Depp. I always refer to the people as their actual names. Ichabod falls off his horse, realizes it's a prank, and he's totally overcome, and he passes out, and then he has a dream.
Oh, also, I just like referring to those guys as the jocks.
They are jockey, aren't
Yeah.
they? And his name's like Brom, which for some reason
Brom is kind of a hot name though.
is kind of 1800s jock name.
Yeah.
Brad Brom.
Oh, don't do that to me.
Oh, sorry, I ruined it for you.
Come on, man.
Damn. So in this dream, and let me just say that this movie is peppered with lots of dreams. And a lot of the plot is kind of like unfolding in dreams.
Okay, my notes though, I'm like just looking and reading them, and my notes are so bad because it's literally just me like trying to puzzle this movie out. And it's like
Asking
none
questions.
of them are really like, yeah, they're all questions.
What is going on? Who is that? Why is this happening?
But tell the dream, and then I'm gonna read you my note about this part because it's so stupid.
So in classic dream fashion, we get like a series of scenes kind of spliced together to tell a little bit of a story here, but we see first a young Ichabod, maybe like 8 years old, approaching a blindfolded woman, calling out to him, Ichabod, Ichabod. And he's like grinning from ear to ear, so clearly it's not like scary.
I don't want to be mean to a little kid,
but
this
you're gonna.
little kid is freaky looking.
Oh, he's adorable though.
I don't know, but yeah, but it's like, I'm not saying like the kid is, but like the way that they've costumed this kid.
Oh, he is in the classic creepy boy attire.
Yeah, and like the hair and the like really thick eyebrows and the just like, and then the little boy like outfit. It's just like, it's just almost, it's like Uncanny Valley.
Is
like,
it the
it's just
same
a little
energy?
bit wrong.
Is it the same energy as like the creepy girls in full ball gown gear or is it different creepy?
It's different.
Different uncanny creepy.
Yeah.
Okay. So we see young sweet Ichabod, following this woman, gives her a little bouquet of flowers, and then a violent red door is flashed across the scene, and the woman is then like taking the flowers and gesturing us to follow her as she burns these flowers in the hearth and draws unique spirally images into the soot of the hearth. And we see her then tucking young Ichabod into bed, consoling him because he's scared of, guess what, lightning flashing outside. And
Mess. That hurt.
Okay. Are you okay?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I'm just like, I'm a bad business partner.
You're fine. So we see the woman who we're assuming at this point is his mom, consoling him.
Yeah,
he's
we're
scared of
assuming.
flashing lightning. And then we see her like playing with a spinning toy of a cardinal in a cage. A little callback to the cardinal at the beginning. Lightning flashes again, and then we see a very angry man staring daggers at them in the rain, and boom, he's awake. So Ichabod wakes back up in his bed in the Van Tassel Manor, and he goes downstairs for a late night snack, I presume.
Can I just quickly read my
Please
note? He has a cardinal in the beginning of the movie. That lady's spitting a cardinal image. That's
Great
my
note, Dakota.
I'm just like, wait a second. Cardinals are
seeing
important.
Things tied together as we speak.
Also, that lady. I'm just not even how you said we assume it's his mom. I'm like,
that lady.
Yeah, we're assuming that's his mom.
Oh gosh,
I might have already been sick.
a little bit.
Now
I'm
I'm reading this.
fever
I'm like,
going on here.
Yeah.
Is this English? Okay. So he goes downstairs for a late night snack because he's been passed out from the previous evening. And he meets Katrina reading by the fire. She hides her books in the cushion, saying that these romance books are, her father's not a fan because they were her mother's, and he's not a fan of romance. But we find out that Katrina's mom passed away 2 years ago, and the nurse who cared for her mom in those years is now actually the lady of the house, which is a little tidbit we'll come back later for.
I think that actually happens a lot, doesn't it? Like in real life?
I think so, in the sense that like as a family member is on their way out, a caregiver comes in, and the person remaining, builds a strong bond with the person who's caring for their loved one. And, it may or may not be romantic at the time.
Yeah.
Who's to say? But in passing, that relationship might play a big role for people in their grieving.
I'm haunting Prob's ass if he fucking marries my nurse. Hard.
Oh yeah, just make his life a living hell.
Absolutely.
Just he turns a corner and you're like, well.
Yeah.
What do we have here?
I knew something was going on. Yeah, like you can't even leave the house to fucking find somebody else to replace me.
Well,
like,
I guess there were 20 people in town in this context.
Honestly, and also she's smoking hot.
Oh, she's that, elegant kind of creepy beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
High
like
cheekbones.
really tight bun, like her tight cheekbones, and just kind of like a permanent hot scowl.
Tits in this movie. Because they're all, it hurts to look at.
The corsets look insane.
Yeah. And the boobs are like,
chin
mine
level.
would be touching my chin.
You wouldn't need to like lay your head to rest. You just like, on your chin on your tits.
Yeah.
So, I lost my spot. Sorry. No, I love it.
Once again, getting distracted by boobs.
By boobs. Okay, so Ichabod questions Katrina about the close connections between all these families in town. Subtle question like, what's going on here? And she explains that most families in the town are connected by blood or marriage, which, that tracks for given how small the town is. And she goes on to tell the story of her family's settlement on the land. So the Van Garretts, the person who was, decapitated at the beginning of the movie, he was kind of like the most wealthy man in town, and he gave land to her father, an acre in a broken down cottage in the woods, and explained that they were very poor while they lived in the cottage, but her father's success as a farmer led to their current wealth that they have now. And she offers to show Ichabod the cottage and gives him a small book of spells, which he declines at first because he doesn't do, spooky stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But she urges him to keep the book close to his heart and that it'll protect him from harm. That'll come back later.
Yeah.
So on horseback, they travel through the woods to visit her old homestead. And this old cottage is in shambles, right? It's no longer a functional dwelling. It's missing walls, roof, etc. And
but the chimney's still the fireplace is still
there.
The
hearth is still there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's showing him around, and she kind of catches a glimpse of his scars and asks him about it. And he reveals that he's had them since he was a child, and he can't really remember, why. And then she picks up a stick and starts to draw some spooky circles in the
same
soot.
Symbols that lady did in his memory.
That lady, aka potentially his mother. No, it was
absolutely his mother.
Absolutely his mother. And then she draws his attention to the stone in the back of the hearth, which is an archer, carved into the stone, and it was there when they arrived. So as night falls, we see through a window the town council. So the doctor, the magistrate, the reverend, and the notary, they're all arguing inside. And Ichabod's walking by, and he notices the magistrate kind of walk away, and he follows him. He approaches him in the fields to question him about the case, and the magistrate ardently explains that he is not the father. I'm not the father of that widow's baby. And that she happened to tell him about who the father is. Guess what? Lightning crashes around, and they hear horsemen.
Did you say that he's leaving town?
Yeah, he is.
He's got his bags.
Yeah.
He's packing his bags.
He's
to
done.
Leave.
Yeah, he is scared. He doesn't want anything to do with it. He rushed off. But unfortunately, a little too late, because the horseman approaches, and Ichabod witnesses the horseman slice off the magistrate's head and takes it away with him.
And he is holding a talisman, right? For protection. And it looks like an ankh.
I thought so too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is an ancient Egyptian symbol. And it's the sun making its way over the horizon.
Oh, I always wondered what it was.
Yeah. So it's for protection? I don't know, it's life or something like that.
So yeah,
I think it has many meanings, but that's
he's spooked. He
oh yeah, I wrote oh shit, it didn't work. I must have had a fever.
I think so. But we see in the scene that the horseman slices off the head, takes the head, and completely ignores Ichabod. He's not there.
Yeah. And so that Ichabod's huh. Like,
it's obvious.
it's not random. It's like,
Mhm.
it should have killed me.
Yeah,
right?
if he was like this, like
Bloodthirsty,
bloodthirsty mercenary, he would have
Mhm.
been hacking off all the heads. But it's a
Mhm.
very specific list of people that he's going through.
Yeah.
So we flash to the next day where Ichabod is hiding in his room, clearly terrified about what he saw on the night prior. Van Tassel, young Mazbeth, and Elizabeth. Not even the same name. Katrina.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, I don't know where that name came from. So Katrina, the young kiddo, and Van Tassel all attempt to console him, but Ichabod is like spiraling.
He just like saw God or
Yeah.
something. Like,
Well,
he's
the devil.
terrified.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
he was totally dismissive of this whole time.
And now he's like, holy fuck, ghosts are real.
Yeah, I am in trouble.
Yeah, that's so scary.
And in true Ichabod fashion, he passes out.
Hmm.
Out of like, and has another dream.
So remember, when was it we were talking about, in episode 3, and we were talking about like stress napping?
Yes.
This is like, also, he's
Yeah.
just fucking passing out. Like, he can't even, he's so stressed and scared, he just fucking falls over like a llama or something.
His flight or fight is really kicking in there, and it's just passing out. So
It's
freeze, yeah. So we see in his dream, we see young Ichabod spinning around in a circle with his mom, not just a lady, in the woods, where all of a sudden, like, we see her fly. Spooky. And we then flash to see his mom and the angry guy fighting over the spirally circles that were drawn in the soot. And like, at this point, we're starting to see, obviously, these are not just dreams, these are memories. We're seeing Ichabod reliving some traumatic memories, where he witnesses this angry man who, later we find out is his dad.
So he also, like, the dad was like watching them through the window before, and it's just like, come in the house, fucking weirdo. Like,
he's like really aggressively angry, and
we never really get more of a story, but I'm like, why did you have a kid with her then? Were his parents married, I wonder? Were that, like, we don't ever get that full story.
No, but it's not
I have
good.
questions.
Yeah,
it was a bad relationship regardless.
Yeah, and this angry guy is what appears to be like a priest or a reverend, but a man of God.
Yeah,
very pious. He's like throwing Bibles at her, and then we flash again to this long corridor.
It's like, you knew who she was before you had a kid with her. What are you doing?
Or maybe she was really good at hiding it, or he's an asshole. The nightmare is like suddenly broken after we see these like very terrified wide eyes being seen through a slit of a metal coffin. Like, very spooky and scary, and then boom, he wakes. That was a Dakota in the bathroom moment, I could imagine.
Yeah, so scary. That's an Iron Maiden. And it's got all the spikes inside.
Very scary. And just like Dakota's giving me like the
rock
and roll symbol. But this is not rock and roll.
No.
That was harmful.
That was very un-rock and roll of him to put her in there.
That was very un-rock and roll. So Ichabod summons all of his gumption and requests the able men who will accompany him to the western woods. He is determined to find the horseman's grave, but no one volunteers besides the very brave
little kid,
Mazbeth boy. Yeah, he's like, I will go with you, and
all
all the
those
adults are
men,
like,
all those men,
cowards. So Ichabod.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, I'm not looking at you on that purpose. Okay?
Don't look at me. Don't look at me. You are beautiful,
no matter what they say. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So Ichabod is attempting.
Very serious.
Oh my god! I'm sorry. I'm trying so hard. Ichabod is attempting to make sense of all the different connections that are like between these victims. So young Mazbeth reveals to him that him and his father lived in the Van Garrett's coach house, and a week before the murder, they overheard an argument between father and son, i.e. older Van Garrett and son Van Garrett.
Yeah.
And the elder Van Garrett sent for Mazbeth to do something. That's all we get, because we're getting this perspective from the kid.
He doesn't fucking know.
He doesn't know. So as the two of them are like rightfully freaked out by the creepy silent woods,
yeah,
they hear very faintly eerie singing coming from a cave. So this is definitely a Dakota leaving to go to the washroom and read Harry Potter.
I
moment.
never saw this part. I'm glad.
So this is quite funny because we see Ichabod being like, well, we must go investigate, but he pushes the kid in front of him to like be the shield as they enter the cave. And we find a spooky dwelling of, you know,
the dwelling itself. I love.
Oh, it's
I
so
love it.
creepy.
It's very. Also, when we first looked at her, I thought she was covered in hair. I was like
Cousin
the Blair or like the Blair Witch, right?
Yeah.
Like I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But it's like she's like wearing like a gown and like a veil.
Yeah, her
right?
face is covered and she's got long grayish blonde dirty hair, and we see like well, it's dirty.
Yeah. No, I just liked it.
Dirty hair. And we see like a variety of like witchy type things.
Yeah.
And the woman, like shrouded in fabrics so we can't see her face, orders the boy away and takes Ichabod deeper into the cave where they sit at a table, and she just promptly locks herself up, just casually, just
the manacles
on her wrist. She's like, you know, it's fine. And she's like testing it out, the reach.
Just making sure
like she can't grab him from across the table.
Yeah.
And explains that she knows of the horseman, and she combines all of these like weird ingredients. She chops the head off of a bat to like squeeze out the blood. It was like gnarly as fuck. And you know, she begins the spell like when the other thing comes, I will hold him back. So she summons the spirit into her body and she launches at him with snake eyes, and she says the following: you seek the warrior bathed in blood, the headless horseman. Follow the trail to where the sun dies. Follow it to the tree of the dead. Climb down into the horseman's resting place.
That was really good.
I think you had to take a breath.
That was really good.
And then she passes out on top of him, like just dead weight. And, you know, Ichabod like races to get out of that cave.
So scary.
And then just like promptly follows her instructions.
Yeah. So they're like, okay, we've got to go to this big tree or whatever.
Yeah, we gotta go find the grave.
Yeah, I was like, is that what she looks like all the time?
I think that's like her plus a little bit of spookiness.
A little extra.
Yeah. As like they're making their way to the tree, Ichabod like clocks a cloaked figure, which, you know, there are so many cloaked figures in the woods in this fucking movie. You're like, oh, another person just walking alone in the woods. There's a friggin' headless horseman walking around. Like, why do you want to be in the woods at this time? But it's Katrina. She followed them into the woods, and young Mazbeth leads them down the trail to the scariest, spookiest tree you can imagine. Like classic Tim Burton, twisted, dead, like and these limbs.
It's not super tall, but it's fat.
And like really laterally twisted. It's a tree of death. Very Tim Burton.
Laterally Twisted is a great band name.
Oh, that is a good band name. Trademark. Ichabod inspects the tree to see that it's not actually sap leaking from the bark, but blood. Gross.
When I was watching this, I was like, oh, it's red sap. And Prob was like, that's blood, you idiot.
Like, you're really trying to rationalize something less scary. You're like, oh, the tree's leaking red sap. That's fine.
It's fucking full of heads.
So Ichabod grabs an axe and he's like, I'm just gonna chop this up. And like, again, blood is like spattered all over his face as he hacks at these roots, and he pulls away a large piece of bark to reveal all of these heads just like tucked neatly and like pulsing at the roots, which is grotesque.
Yeah.
And this tree, this grave site, is a gateway between two worlds. Ichabod goes up because it's kind of like on a little bit of an elevated area where he has to kind of like walk up to get to the actual grave. But the sword is like stabbed into the earth, King Arthur style. And ivy and weeds are like growing all over the hilt. A demonstration of time passing, really, and eeriness. And we see through Ichabod that like the gravesite itself has been disturbed.
Yeah, the dirt's like loose.
Yeah, someone has been here recently. And they begin digging, which is gnarly. And they find a skeleton without a skull. And Ichabod theorizes that the horseman returns to the land of the living to take the heads until his head is promptly returned to him. Which is, I love that lore. That's fun. Lightning flashes. And Katrina and Mazbeth see moving from the base of the tree where the heads are like tucked in. Squelching noises and like pulsing. I'm a classic movie watcher with subtitles, and the subtitles use the word squelching, and I was like, perfect. That is the perfect word to describe the sounds that this is making. And the headless horseman on his horse. I don't know why I wrote that. the Headless Horseman on his horse
obviously
bursts. Oh, right, because he like bursts through the like
the
roots.
He's like riding the horse. He like
through the
comes through.
gateway.
Yeah.
And the horseman rides into town, not paying attention to any of the three of them. They were like, whoop, whoop, and they hurriedly follow him.
So, and that's really like that last like confirmation for Icky that like, okay, it is a list. Right?
It is a
like,
list.
because they're all three of them are right there. And
Yeah.
he didn't even like see them.
Didn't even phase them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also like very clearly supernatural too, because that horse just busted through a tree. Like that's like there's no doubt at this point.
Yeah.
So we then flash to
And yeah, up until this point I still was like, no, it's somebody.
It's somebody.
Yeah.
Right? So we're now kind of like back in town, with the three of them still trying to like catch up to the horseman as he rides into town. But we see the midwife and
this
the
is the part that
stableman
made me cry.
and their young son, who's like maybe 4. And this
is a cute kid.
This is a cute kid, sweetie pie.
This
with
is a
red hair,
little baby,
and you see that this is like a happy family.
Yeah,
and you're kind of like,
and the
not
midwife's
sure how they're connected.
The midwife's husband has been helping Ichabod, like he's
with
like
the horse.
He helped him with the horse, and there was some other, I think, like he's like always the one who's like showing him this or like what, like the only one of the like men that's like just like been really nice and helpful to him. Yeah,
a local who's actually helpful and kind, and not dodgy.
The bread that they're eating looks so good. Did you clock that?
I did not
bread
clock
on their
the
table?
bread. Was it like a loaf?
Oh my god, yeah, and it looked like a yummy sourdough, but like darker.
Oh, that's like a cast iron loaf of bread.
And it
on
was
a
like
fire.
cut, like you could see the cross section.
Can we get a zoom in on the cross section of that bread, please?
Yeah, it would look really good.
Damn. If we hadn't have eaten lunch before this, I'd be hungry.
I'm licking my chops. Right.
I could go for some bread right
I
now.
would have a little avocado toast.
Ooh. With that Macedonian feta. Cannot speak. Okay, back at it.
Sorry.
So, we see this like genuinely lovely family. Yeah. They're like teasing each other, cuddly kissy. The kid's like playing in his room, but the house begins to rumble, and the horseman like busts straight through the front door, and a fight between the horseman and the kind man. And we really know how this is gonna go. Like heads are gonna fly. So the mom hides her son under the floor as the horseman comes to finish the job on her. And like the scariest scene of this whole movie is this little boy under the stairs listening to his parents murder. And then just as we think he'll be safe, the horseman comes back and to finish the job and grab the little boy.
Yeah, and I cried. Yeah. Because I was just like, he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to kill that baby. Like,
and in some twisted way, I think he did. Because he's we'll get into it.
Yeah.
But I don't think he has any kind of sentient idea or choice.
Yeah, no, I know but I'm just saying, like, that made me really sad.
Yeah.
I'm sad talking about it.
It's dark. And
and it's like, I didn't care about anybody else.
Except this is the part of the movie where our hearts break. Yeah, it's sad because, like, screams are heard, the cavalry comes running, and a single gunshot, like, hits the horseman on his way out, but I wrote down, bro can't load his old-timey gun fast enough.
He's like shaking and
trying to
get
put gunpowder and like the thing to like stamp it down. And the horseman like knocks him down, but continues to walk. It doesn't pay any attention because this is Brom. Sorry. So whenever I say bro, I mean Brom. Yeah. So bro gets up again and like hits him with a throwing dagger, and the ghost demon man is obviously unfazed by this, and like. He like takes out the dagger and like stabs Brom in the leg, not to kill, but to maim. And Ichabod's like watching this all happen because I think they've caught up at this point. Yeah. Runs over and quickly shouts at Brom to like, leave him. He's not after you. But Brom can't let it go, and he grabs 2 sickles from like a nearby.
And also though, in Brom's defense, like, he wants to just like, take murked a whole family. He's right there. Like he
seems like an honorable guy. Ish. Prank aside. But he's obviously in this like mindset of like, I have to defend. He's clearly here. Let me take him out. Yeah. And so he grabs the 2 sickles to go after the horseman again. And Ichabod, in his like reasoning, he's like, I'm going to grab a weapon too. So I'm going to help. So he grabs a longer sickle or a scythe. And the horseman is obviously unfazed, kind of sees this as like a bit of a bothersome piece where he's like, I don't have to kill you. I'm not here for you. You're just annoying me now. I've got shit to do. I've got a whole to-do list that I have to get back to. So they're fighting, stabbing. And they like chase him over the covered bridge and they lose track of him, but they're under the covered bridge.
I remember this part.
And they look behind. The horseman's gone, but they hear boom, boom, boom. Creepy.
He's on top of
footsteps.
the bridge, right?
Yeah. And the footsteps are coming from atop the covered bridge. He jumps down. Ichabod is tossed aside, and the horseman cuts Brom in half.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, because it's like, he's not going to chop this head off. No biggie. I'm just going to kill you.
Yeah, he doesn't
quickly.
need it.
Yeah. He's like, I don't need your head, so I'm going to cut you in half.
Yeah.
And then he leaves, and guess what?
What?
Ichabod passes out. Again.
What a great hero.
He is. Ichabod is wounded and under the care of the village doctor. However, Katrina has her own medicine mind.
Crow soup.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Magic crow foot.
Don't eat or drink crow.
It's not good for you.
Just don't. Like, bad shit'll happen to you.
You'll turn into a crow, actually. That's what I've heard.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's why there's so many. Just people eating crows and stuff.
Okay. It's crazy.
Jokes. She brings him a cup of something to help him sleep. And in a fit of fever and fear, Ichabod reveals that he's discovered that the horseman does not attack at random. His victims are chosen. Worried glancers are kind of like shared between the town elders, like Van Tassel and the doctor, all like, oh shit, not at random. He has a list. And it also explains that there is a person controlling the horseman.
Yeah.
A person with the skull. Someone who knows what they're doing, knew where to dig, and he passes out again.
Mm-hmm.
Dream time. So we see the angry pastor dad leave the ominous black room in the back of the church, and young Ichabod's like hiding in the pews, and he walks through the door and he sees like a terrible torture scene. So these torture instruments are laid about the room. We see a large metal coffin, the Iron Maiden, in the back, and like we hear again, Ichabod, and he's following because he's like, oh, that's my mom, I'm gonna follow the voice. But then he sees his mom's eyes staring back at him through the slits of the Iron Maiden door.
Mm-hmm.
And he's obviously startled. He backs up. She's covered in blood, and he falls onto like a torture chair with spikes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he has that like grid line pattern of scars on his hands.
Yeah.
And the middle door is like somehow open and spills out a ridiculous amount of blood on this poor kid.
More blood than would reasonably be in a body.
A Tim Burton amount of blood.
Yeah.
And he wakes up. Katrina is there to comfort him, and he tells her about how her mother was murdered by his own father's hands. And he speaks
how his mom was murdered.
Yes.
By his father.
father's. Yeah. And, you know,
his dad killed his mom.
One more time?
His dad killed his mom.
Good.
We got it.
I like blanked out at the last one. I was like, wait, what are we talking about?
Who?
Where am I? So Katrina then, you know, speaks of her own tears of loss for her boyfriend Brom, but she's not heartbroken. She has feelings for someone else.
Okay, so during this, they're like sitting really close to each other talking, right? And when we were watching it, I was yelling. I'm like, they're gonna kiss! They're gonna kiss! And Prob was yelling at me, and he's like, isn't she a kid?
She is a kid!
She's a child!
Ugh.
And I was like, no, she's a woman.
Yeah, but...
and he was like, she has he said she has an apricot face, so he thought she was a kid.
Well, I guess at like 18, 19.
And I was like, that's legit. Also, she is a kid.
She is a kid.
But just like, I'm like, they're gonna kiss. He's like, that is a child. What's wrong with you?
You know, back in those times, it was super
She was an
normal.
old maid.
Yeah, old maid.
19.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Get married already and have babies. It's your duty, you know? Okay, so it's dawn. Ichabod awakes to Lady Van Tassel by his bedside this time. The kind of beautiful tight ponytail stepmom. She mentions that the servant girl has run away because of all of the fear in the village, and she leaves him to drink soup, I suppose. Crow soup. So Mazbeth and Ichabod, in their classic disorganized fashion, find out some kind of a system with names and papers and string, like putting all of these clues together, like the classic meme of Charlie Day, like on the wall, of trying to figure out all of these connections. And we're just actually missing the red string at this point.
That's like my favorite thing on the internet. I think.
Love it.
That image. It's so good.
Him just like wild looking.
So wired. Yeah.
So Ichabod theorizes about the murders, and they must proceed with the process of elimination. So we kind of, again, see the scientific mind of Ichabod kind of doing his due diligence with his job. He makes a list of every villager, which takes maybe 5 minutes because there's only 20 of them.
Are you kidding me? There's like less
now. Yeah,
there's, like,
all the murders.
Fucking 13 people left.
And he goes through each one to determine if they're connected or not. And so he pulls out the Bible that was given to him by the Reverend at the
family
beginning.
Family tree in the Bible.
So, like Katrina said, everyone is connected by some measure of blood. And he sees on the tree that within the cover of the book, he gets like a brainwave to head back to the notary to ask some further questions about all of these families' interconnectedness. So they get to the notary, and it's disheveled. There's papers and books spilling everywhere, and the notary just kind of like hops out of a cupboard, being like, "Oh, don't hurt me!" And they question him about the will, like the last will and testament of Van Garrett, the guy that died at the beginning. The notary explains that the entire estate was left to Van Garrett's son, who was also murdered. So if the estate passes to the next of kin, who gets the inheritance? Essentially all of the money in the village. That's what we're talking about here in terms of the inheritance. Young Mazbeth finds the last will and testament, the newest version, the latest version. One was written right before he died. So that's what we saw at the very beginning of the movie.
In the opening credits, basically.
Yeah, totally. And it names Emily Winship as the sole inheritor. We're like, why?
Okay.
Because a marriage certificate was also found with the last will and testament for old Van Garrett and the widow Winship. So when the will reveals that the money would go all to her and their unborn child. So we see that Van Garrett secretly married the widow Winship because they had an unborn child. And the 4 town elders, the Reverend knew the secret as he performed the marriage. The doctor attended to the pregnant widow, and the magistrate gave protection of the law, and the notary sealed all the documents. So this was a very hush-hush, last-minute kind of like writing of documents to secure the inheritance to the unborn child.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why old Van Garrett and young Van Garrett was fighting, because his son is like, I don't get anything?
I believe so.
And, okay, did Van Garrett think he was about to die? Like, why is he rushing so much to get this?
I'm not entirely sure. Maybe they wanted to do it
because she's pregnant?
Yeah, I think they wanted to do it really quickly because the timing of certain things. I think she got pregnant before they were married. Obviously. And that would look like really bad.
Right.
And the gossip in that town, like the 13 people would just be like yakking away.
Yeah, you can never show your face again.
You can't go anywhere in town.
All right, I'm getting it.
So after all these murders, the estate would go to Van Garrett's next of kin, none other than the remaining person alive, Baltus Van Tassel.
Okay, so that makes it look like Baltus is guilty, right?
A little bit. So Ichabod races back to Van Tassel house to find Katrina in his room. She tells them that her father thinks that he should go back to New York. And right now at this point, we're like, Baltus, you're supposed to get all of the money. You're telling Ichabod that he needs to go back. Suspicious. And Mazbeth follows this like big ass tarantula spider that doesn't really track for upstate New York, but for the purposes of the story, we'll follow it. And this spider like kind of crawls under the bed. You know, Katrina's already left at this point. And he moves the bed to reveal a ward of sports. Ward of sports. And by ward, I mean like a drawn spell, I suppose, on the ground.
Symbol.
Yeah. And Mazbeth says it's the evil eye. Someone is casting spells against you.
Fucking Mazbeth doesn't know shit.
Because
there's not even an eye on that drawing.
No. And I think it just goes to show that like people are immediately like satanic panic.
Scared, yeah.
That's never been a problem. Or that's always been a problem.
Yeah. The opposite of that. In the middle of the night, like later on, they follow, guess what, another hooded person into the woods. And Ichabod and Mazbeth follow this person deep into the woods where... Is Mazbeth with him?
Yeah, the little boy.
Oh.
And I think at some point, like, he like hangs back while Ichabod sees Lady Van Tassel getting jiggy with it with the Reverend. And like this is some interesting kinky shit because like she dramatically cuts her palm while they're fucking.
I could never figure out who that was.
Oh, it's later revealed that it's him in like a quick scene.
Oh yeah, I did see that, and I still didn't like put it together. I was like, she's hooking up with everybody.
This movie is complicated, to be fair. So while they're having sex, she dramatically cuts her palm and like spreads the blood all over his back, and Ichabod's like alarmed because he's like, oh, I'm seeing something I shouldn't. And
also, he's like going down on her, right?
She's like,
because you can see her whole like upper.
I think they're making out, and then pans to him.
All right,
going south. They return to the house, and all of the evidence that they had kind of like collected was taken, and he finds Katrina just burning the documents in the old cottage where she showed him in the woods, and she did it to protect her father. And they have a little tiff in the forest, and she's like, "You're not the man I thought you were," and he's like, "But for science and the law, I must do what is told of me."
Yeah, because she's like, "I'm not gonna let you fucking pin this on my dad," and you know, I thought you like, I didn't think this was like, and he's just saying the evidence is showing me that it might be your dad, and I have to investigate that. It's what's right to do.
And she's young, right?
Yeah.
So she's like acting impulsively to protect her dad, not fully understanding the scope.
Yeah.
So later on the next day, we see Ichabod like asking Lady Van Tassel if Katrina will ever speak to him again. And Lady Van Tassel explains to him that she will not. And she questions him about how he hasn't asked her about the wound on her hand.
Because her hand is like fully dramatically bandaged. It's huge looking.
Like, look at me bandaged.
Yeah, and he's like looked everywhere except for he's like not. So she's like, I'm very obviously injured. You haven't asked me.
Yeah. And she shoves the wound in his face. Gross. And she reveals that she knows that he followed her last night and to not say anything to her husband
about what he saw. And I was like, me and Johnny are both not really sure what we saw.
We're not quite sure.
She's like, don't tell him what you saw. And both of us are like, okay. Because I couldn't tell anybody what I saw. I have no idea what the fuck that was.
Yeah, the movie's kind of ramping up to at this point where it's just like, what the hell is going on right now? Information is slowly being connected.
I'm telling you, I was gasping for air like for the last 45 minutes. I was just like, what?
Yeah. So, before their conversation could continue, Baltus rushes into the kitchen and tells them that the notary has killed himself last night, and the reverend has called a town meeting in the church that night, and he encourages Ichabod to get the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah, and doesn't he ask her what she did? And she's like, LOL, I tripped on a knife or whatever.
So, you know, flash to that night where people are like, all 13 people are gathering into the church for the town meeting. And Baltus witnesses the horseman, you know, approach his unbeknownst wife.
She is like picking flowers for like something to heal her wound. She's facing him away from the forest. He's facing her that's towards the forest. He sees the horseman come out of the woods. He approaching her, and he like runs away
before anything like dramatic happens. He's like, oh my god, not saving her whatsoever. He's just like, okay, bye.
Yeah, so she dies.
We like assume that the horseman like takes her out, and
well, he comes running into the church, and he's like, the horseman killed her, right?
So he's obviously shooken up because he saw the horseman like draw his blade to strike at the Lady Von Tassel, and instead of helping, he bolts, and he rushes to the church yelling for Katrina that the horseman has killed her stepmother, and guess what? More fog, more lightning, spooky stuff ensues because the horseman is now rushing the church.
Yeah.
And people are very
scared.
Yeah. Get in. And so we see that the horseman cannot pass the line of the threshold of the church area because of sacred land. And and he's a hell demon, of course. He can't come in. Not invited. Rude. And the chaos of people freaking out, Katrina draws a ward again of protection on the floor of the church, and she is overheard someone say that to Baltus that he is the one that the horseman wants. And so she's obviously really shooken up, and So we flash to the outside where the horseman is kind of like circling the church, trying to like
He's puzzling this out.
figure it out. Yeah. He's clearly pissed that he can't just come in and grab his victim, the next thing on his to-do list. And the town doctor bumbles out that it's time for them to confess their sins. And he begins to tell Baltus that his 4 friends played with them. They were possessed by... But before he could finish his sentence and what he was going to say, the Reverend smacks him over the head with a giant wooden cross, which was like a horrible scene of just like awful carnage inside the church. As he bludgeons the doctor to death, Baltus shoots the Reverend.
Oh.
Yeah.
So the Reverend killed the doctor just now.
Yeah. As he was about to reveal secrets.
That his friends were in cahoots.
Yes.
Okay.
And
because he says that, he's like, your friends.
Yeah, we were possessed by.
Right.
And then before like anything else could happen, Baltus shoots the Reverend, and then he's like pushed by a mob of like angry people because everybody just saw someone get smacked in the head.
Freaking the fuck out.
Absolute mayhem, chaos. People are panicking, and they kind of like rush Baltus up these stairs, and he gets pushed towards a large window. And then we see this like very pissed horseman thinking up a very clever way of getting his next victim.
Love this problem solving.
Yeah, this was hot thinking in the moment. He fashions this like fishing lure out of a sharp post and a rope, and he javelin throws this like fishing line through the window, spears Baltus, and then drags him out of the church through the church gate just enough to slice off that noggin.
That was for real problem solving. I love that part actually.
You're like, oh, work.
Yeah.
And unfortunately Katrina witnessed this and she faints.
That's sad.
Everybody has like a pretty low constitution back in the 1800s, just fainting and vomiting, and
well, that corset is fucking tight.
She probably does have a lot of oxygen going in and out of there. Doesn't explain it for Johnny Depp's character though.
Oh, he's wearing a corset.
100%. So we then flash back to the Van Tassel Manor. Katrina is tucked in nicely while she rests. Ichabod says that he's got to go. He says his goodbye while she sleeps, tosses his notebook of evidence and strange doodles. Did you see those doodles? They were like 13-year-old drawings on your binder in middle school of like hearts and like I don't know, doves flying XOXO. And he considers so he throws the doodle book into the fire with all of the evidence, and he considers also throwing out the spell book that Katrina gave him. But when his ride arrives, he kind of thinks twice and puts it back, and he gets into a carriage to then go back to New York.
I thought that he thinks she's dead.
I don't think so.
Oh. I thought she was dead.
Well, why would you tuck a dead body in bed?
It's like, I was like,
crow soup.
Okay, explain to me how the fuck Katrina died. I don't get it.
You were having a fever during this movie.
I'm telling you. And I do love that he's leaving town now that everybody's dead except for Mazbeth.
Yeah, he's like, I think my job is
done.
Job
well done.
Can't wait to report this back to the captain. So Katrina just wakes up in time to watch him ride away. And like that longing look out the window being like, oh, goodbye, my love. We've known each other for a week. He rides away and passes the morgue as he's like on his way out of town, where he witnesses the body of Lady Van Tassel being carried in. He recognizes the long cut on her palm, but then suddenly realizes in his thinking, the ward that Katrina was drawing was not there to target him, but to protect him from evil. And he demands for the coach to be turned around and go back to the morgue.
I can tell he's figuring something out, but I'm fucking lost.
He's figuring something out, but Dakota does not know what's happening. And to be fair, like, I've seen this movie like dozens of times. This movie is fairly confusing, and it's kind of meant to like unfold immediately at the end of the movie. So you're kind of like, what the
I'm
hell?
like, I know we're on the edge of this thing, but
it'll reveal itself soon. So the coach turns around, they go back to the morgue. He, walks in, examines the body of Lady Van Tassel, and he like really goes in hard to like understand in this moment that the palm wound was administered after death, because of his knowledge of anatomy and sciences, he is able to see that the coagulation of the blood, something, this
it's
wound,
wrong.
it's wrong.
Yeah.
So that doesn't line up with the timeline of things, and something fishy is afoot here. So we are back in the Van Tassel manor, and Katrina is caught completely off guard by Lady Van Tassel approaching her.
I thought she was dead.
Because, like, straight up, that's a very scary thing to see, thinking that someone was dead and now they're just like, you know, creepily walking towards you. There's so much fainting in this movie. And she says, "Dearest stepdaughter, you look like you've seen a ghost," which is such a baller, scary thing to say to someone when they think you're dead.
Yeah.
She is fierce. So Lady Van Tassel has taken Katrina out to the windmill, where she begins a summoning spell to call the horsemen to do her bidding. We see that behind this whole fiasco, Lady Van Tassel is the one in charge of all of this. And there's one more beheading tonight, Katrina. The horseman rises. So here's when we get the full download of like everything being summed up in this scene here.
Okay, hit me with it.
Okay, so ready?
Mm-hmm.
She reveals that the horseman only appeared to be coming for her last night with the sword drawn. The body that they thought was the lady was in fact Sarah, the servant girl, who she lied that ran away.
Right.
She was just violently murdered by the lady, and revealed that her family name was actually Archer. Cue back to the Archer scene, the stone in the cottage hearth. She explains that she lived there with her parents and her sister in the cottage many, many years ago, long before Katrina and her family ever lived there. Her father died tragically one day, and the landlord evicted the family despite many years of loyal service. No one in town would take them in because her mother was suspected of witchcraft. They lived as outcasts in the Western Wood, her mother teaching the two girls the ways of the witch, and she died within the year, leaving the two young girls to fend for themselves in their formal wear.
In that fucking cave, right?
Yeah. Which is terrible, like terrible and terrifying together.
Love it.
Terrible. So, while gathering firewood one day, they encountered the horseman as he was just moments before his death. So she was the small girl who snapped the stick to alert the soldiers to the Hessian's whereabouts. And at the moment of his death, the lady offered her soul to Satan. This sweet little 8-year-old kid's like, you know what? I'm done with this. I need a better life.
Yeah.
Who can help me? The big devil.
Probably Satan.
And so she in her like understanding of all this, if Satan would raise the Hessian from the grave to avenge her against the Van Garrett family, the landlord, as well as Baltus and the family, because they stole her cottage home from her.
I mean, through the eyes of a fucking 6-year-old they did, but they didn't.
No, it's just cruel. Like the cruel ways of business.
They just moved in.
Yeah.
After they got
cruelly
evicted.
evicted.
Like, they literally just were the next tenants after them, and that's why she wants to
take them out.
Yeah.
So you can clear she's been like planning this from, I don't know, 7, 8 years old. So she knew she had to make her way into the home somehow. So she came in as the nurse to care for Katrina's ailing mother. Mm-hmm. She killed the mother.
Right.
And then made her way into the marriage bed with Baltus to secure her legacy.
Right.
So in order for her to receive the full estate, all of the money, all of the inheritance, all of the other individuals in the will.
All I have to do is kill fucking 25
half of the town.
That's crazy, man.
So she knew she had to kill everybody in line as well as all the witnesses, right? To be murdered. Because there were witnesses who signed the will of testament. There was the doctor, the widow, not the widow, sorry, the midwife was also aware of the baby. Pregnancy. So she basically had to wipe the slate clean with anybody somewhat merely connected, because that little kid wasn't
thinking about him right now. Yeah,
but like in the eyes of the horseman, he had to take out the line, right?
Yeah,
the whole line of people, the bloodline. So she explained that she controlled the full elders with lust. So she seduced the reverend. She controlled another through fear, frightening the magistrate and the notary. Blackmailed the doctor because he was having a relationship with Sarah, the servant girl. Flashback to the couple making out on the deck at the party that first night. And so Lady Van Tassel reveals that she would inherit everything upon the death of Katrina, as she is listed as the primary inheritor of her father's will, naturally.
Right.
So, she murdered her twin, who was actually the witch who was in the cave, because the witch helped Ichabod. So the sister was actually like a good guy all along and trying to help.
Scary.
Yeah, just spooky and, cavey. Both Ichabod and the horsemen are now like racing to the windmill because Ichabod's like slowly pulling everything together and the horseman has been summoned, and Ichabod reaches them just in time, but the horseman chases them all into the mill where they begin to barricade the door. But the horseman's on a mission. Like he's basically under a spell of compulsion that he has to do what she says. And he breaks through. Ichabod attempts to fend off the horsemen as best as he can. The three of them, basically, they manage to get up at the top of the windmill. The whole thing's on fire, going up like a matchbook, and the horseman is still inside. But they make their way off in this dramatic fashion of like grabbing the blade of the windmill and like circling down to the ground. And the windmill dramatically explodes with like all of the, I don't know, wheat and barley in there. And, the horseman makes out way unscathed because he's a hell demon.
Yeah.
And, a chase scene begins between carriage and horseman. Long story short, Ichabod ends up on the devil horse and the horseman is being dragged by the carriage, and the fight scene.
It's funny, right?
It's funny, also scary.
Yeah.
And, the horseman is on a mission and nothing is going to stop them.
Yeah.
But they find themselves at the end of it, at the base of the devil tree where the Lady Van Tassel is waiting there for them. She shoots Ichabod in the chest, snags Katrina by the hair. Ichabod, saved by the small spell book that Katrina had given him. Keep it close to your heart. Keep it close to your heart. Was there to block the bullet from, penetrating him. Mm-hmm. And he grabs the satchel because, then the Lady Van Tassel is like, tussling with Katrina. So he sees that the head is being left unattended. He grabs it. The horseman is beelining it to Katrina because that's what he's meant to do, and about to cut her head off while the lady and Ichabod have a scuffle for the skull. And young Mathis slams her in the head with like a branch just before, the horseman can claim his last victim. Ichabod chucks the skull at him, where he then puts his skull back on the stump neck.
The way that he snatches that skull out of the air is so funny.
So dramatic.
Yeah.
Just like, whatcha!
Yeah.
And then, like, the tendons and the muscles and the veins all growing back on the skull as he attaches it to his head to reveal Christopher Walken once more. So Shark-Tooth Christopher Walken, turns his sight onto Lady Van Tassel and grabs her limp body because she's been knocked out because of, young Masbeth. And the evil tree hellmouth opens up, and we see the horseman give Lady a rather aggressive shark-toothy kiss where she's like bleeding because he's like chomping down on her, which is gross and, justice.
I guess.
And they ride off into the sunset together.
No, they ride into the hole.
Yeah, they ride into the death hole. So they jump into the hellmouth together. Forever to burn in hell. Love story complete. And guess what?
What?
Ichabod faints.
Oh, yeah. You've got me with that a few times.
I know. I'm like,
what?
Really? It's either fog, lightning, or fainting at this point. So now back where the evil is where it needs to be. Yeah. Back where it belongs. The sun comes out. Surprise.
It's like a nice place.
It is beautiful. Upstate New York. Love it. Katrina and young Masbeth. Matthias, I wrote. That's wrong. They all make their way back to New York to start the next chapter of their lives together in the big city, and all is well in the world. Yeah. And that's literally it. That's
and
the end.
She's got a huge inheritance, which is nice.
Yeah. And she's out of that, town of 12 people now, I suppose.
Nobody left.
Nobody left.
Yeah.
But that is the plot and story of Tim Burton's 1999 movie.
Loved it. So I'm just going to quickly say that the book is more about Ichabod's time in this lovely little town. It's like really deeply descriptive about like the food and the parties and stuff. The horseman isn't really a character.
Oh yeah?
It's more how the different people in the town have their own stories of their experiences with it. So it's more like a ghost story. The horseman doesn't even show up until the very end of the book when Ichabod finally has an interaction with it. But it's left really ambiguous whether it's a real ghost or if it's Brom fucking with him.
Oh.
Yeah. In the book, Katrina marries Brom,
Womp womp.
which is more age appropriate, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much it. Nobody dies. You know, it's like yeah.
So this take, let's say, is really leaning into the supernatural side of things.
Yeah, totally.
And I was obsessed with this movie because, you know, at various different times I had different understandings, obviously, because I think I was 12 when I watched this, or maybe 11. But it's this movie like I like returning back to because the mystery of it is so intriguing. This take on this classic kind of like spooky tale is quite interesting and intriguing. I love the costumes.
Yeah.
Beautiful dresses.
There's some really beautiful embroidery work.
Oh yeah. The red roses on that the either gown or cape is quite lovely. And just the slow burn of it too is quite intriguing.
But it's not too slow. Like it's exciting the whole time. You're like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Because it's like getting way, way more intense and insane as it goes.
Yeah.
So what'd you think?
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I loved it. It was really fun.
Cool.
It was really fun. It was fun too to like watch it and have flickers of like, I remember that.
Oh yeah.
I remember that. But then for the most part,
I don't remember this. I was not here for this.
So it was like watching it for the first time. Like I really was like,
cool.
Whoa.
Nice.
Yeah. So I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. Yeah, it was good. It was really good.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, one more thing I wanted to say. In the book, Ichabod is a teacher.
Oh.
Yeah, he's just
officer.
like a teacher. Yeah.
Yeah. I like it too because it's like, obviously she's a villain, but Lady Van Tassel, who had orchestrated this entire thing, you know, the witchcraft element of it too is really neat. But just seeing the villain be this, you know, calculated, she's evil, but like very intelligent, crafty woman pulling the strings from behind the scene, I thought was really rad.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are elements of this movie that stand out to me as something that I don't necessarily like as much. Some, you know, I guess the villain was like a really interesting, well-rounded female character, but Katrina kind of fell flat a little bit. I
just feel like, you know what, they don't have to end up together. When I was watching it, I was like, when did they fall in love? Like there's no reason for them to like they have nothing in common. Like there's no she's so much younger than him, and it's just like, you know, I honestly didn't need the quote unquote romance element of that at all. I will say I loved this era of Johnny Depp though. That haircut, loved it. Like it really transported me back
to that time.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt about it. I was just like, what's the like,
why?
Yeah, but because they have to, right? Like that's like,
it was kind of the formula, right?
Yeah,
which is too bad. And I think obviously, like we've said many, many times, as we rewatch these lovable movies, there are elements of it that will always stick out to me as being something that I absolutely adore, and I will rewatch this movie again.
I'm gonna watch it again. I loved it.
Yeah.
I was like sad that I feel like I said how I loved Sweeney Todd. If I would have seen this when I was 15, this would have been one that I've seen a million times, but I was just too young and it was too scary at the time, and then I just never circled back to it. There have been many times, I think it used to be on Netflix, where I almost watched it and then I was just like, watch some, no, not too scary. I'm a brave girl now.
Yes.
But just like there was something else, or I was like, you know.
Yeah. And I love this podcast for this reason, where it is prompting us to obviously watch a movie that our friend really likes, but it's really encouraging us to watch the movie that we might have looked over at one point in time or haven't rewatched in ages. I love that element of it.
For sure.
And I swear to God, this movie became my personality for a few months, right? Like I was like drawing wards and summoning hell spirits. I was definitely into that.
Daredevil. Daredevil and Gunpowder. Oh, please. So cute.
I love it. Okay, so how do you want to rate this?
I kind of feel like, how likely are you going to jump into that fucking hell portal?
Ooh.
Something like that, you know? Like, are you taking the leap?
And blatantly, my answer is yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Count me in. Squish those heads to the side. head first, no pun intended,
Yeah.
into the hellmouth
Yeah.
to dance with the devil himself.
Oh, I love that. I am letting you go first.
Oh, polite.
I'm
Thank
watching you. Okay, she did it. I'm dipping my toe
Just a single toe.
to see how warm it is.
Yeah, it's hot.
And then I am going in, but I'm going in legs first. Like I'm putting and then I'm slowly
Wading in.
I'm lowering myself in. Yeah.
I'm just visualizing you being like, okay, slow and steady. Slow and steady. Oh,
Arms last.
arms last. Just
Yeah.
2 little fingies left.
Okay, I'm coming. You're like pulling. You're pulling my like legs down
Like,
in.
the water's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we need to pick next week's
Oh my gosh.
movie.
Okay.
They're over there.
Where?
Over there. I scoped them out last time on the windowsill. And I think I'm on top. God. Good thing we're already in hell. Okay. She is reaching into the hat. I'm so excited. This
always,
is honestly
like,
my favorite.
Me too. I always fondle them
podcast.
all like I'm trying to like divine.
Who is calling
And
to
there's
you?
a few in here now. Okay.
Here we go. Oh my god, I'm so excited.
I'm
Again.
scared. Always. Oh, fuck yeah. Oh.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is going to be a good one.
This is gonna be fun.
This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is your...
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sick.
It's going to be good.
Yeah. Aha!
Ah. Little inside joke for our friends there.
All right. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. It was a fun one today. And
Yeah, that was super fun.
Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed that, please like, subscribe, leave a review.
Mm-hmm.
We want reviews. We want reviews. We want... Okay, I really
Reviews.
thought you were going to join
Sorry,
in.
I was listening. I'm like,
fuck. If you would like to get in touch with us, if you have any questions, comments, any suggestions, anything
Mhm.
like that, feel free to email us at newfriendcinema@gmail.com.
Mhm.
You can find us on Instagram at newfriendcinema.
And as always, thanks for listening. And we'll see you. I always say see you next time, but like,
See you later.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Quick, can we pause? I have to pee.
Go, 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 go. I will leave you a song for you to edit out later. What song should it be? I have so many Willies. Maybe I'll sing a Willie Nelson song. Do I know a Willie Nelson song? I smoke weed every day. That's a Willie Nelson song. Now it just feels weird not to say anything. It's just this empty room with me and the microphone. Just by myself. Unable to sit in silence. Oh no, what does this mean about me? I can't not be quiet. Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna drink. I will drink and that will shut me up. It's not me, it's my drink. I wonder if you can hear that. Oh god, I almost choked on boba. The podcast suddenly ends. We gotta go to the hospital. Death by boba. I'm just talking to myself. I'm back, baby. She's back.